Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Tabak Business Sales Podcast with Damien and Sam. Today we would like to talk about buyers. Without buyers, we obviously wouldn't be in business. We love them, but they all have varying levels of experience and understanding of what it is they're actually after. So we just want to have a bit of talk about what their motivations are, how much or how little some of them do know. There's a little bit of naivety out there, so hopefully we can just share a little bit with vendors if you're watching, but also with buyers, and you might sort of learn on a bit more about how the process works and what to expect.
Cool, thank you, Sam. So firstly, what motivates a buyer? Well, a buyer can be someone who's working for wages or on salary and simply has got to the point where they say, you know what, I think I can actually work for myself. I'm adding real value to my employer. I'd rather actually bank the profit from the value I'm adding and enjoy that myself. So, and often they can be in their sort of, mid-30s to mid-40s or late 40s. They've worked their way up the totem pole where they are. They're getting a reasonable salary, and they've got good business experience. And so they're saying, yep, I've got good equity in my house or whatever it might be. I can afford to buy a reasonably good business, and away we go. So that's at the mid to high end. At the low end, we might have the tradie who's on the tools, and they have again, they're ambitious, or they have a falling out, or they just say, hey, look, I don't like the way these guys are doing their business. I'm going to do it myself because I know I can do better. And that's at the entry level end, and that's fine. The other couple of where a buyer will just want purely a good financial return and sit back and count the money and not do a lot for it, and we'll talk to that shortly. But again, more commonly is the buyer who's already in business. They own their own business or businesses, and they're looking for bolt-ons. I had a conversation with one of those gentlemen yesterday. He's got 3 businesses now, and he's looking for another one because he keeps structuring himself out of a job. They're all running pretty well, and he's got some spare capacity, and so he wants another one. So, look, the buyer motivations and the buyer, capabilities can be quite extreme, and our role really is to understand, where this particular buyer might fit into into there. So,
and that's where empathy kicks in, and for us, it's understanding that quite often it's the smaller transactions, say a business that's worth less than $500,000, 500,000. Quite often those buyers need to be slightly more educated on the process than whether it's a business that's making $500,000 or $1 million managed and it's more of an investment. Those buyers usually have a good team of advisors. Even though our fees are quite often 5-10 times bigger, it's actually an easier process because everybody actually knows what they're doing. Whereas the new guys, we love them, but we actually have to educate them. Do you have an accountant? No. Oh, you might want to get them. Have you talked to the bank? No. Well, you might want to talk to the bank. Do you own a house? No. Oh, okay. You might want to go back and rethink things because, and I'm not being disrespectful, but some actually look at a business and go, this is fantastic. What do I do now? Well, have you talked to a bank? Oh, I need to borrow money? Well, yeah, okay. Will they just lend it to me? Well, no. They kind of look at security and they look at your background and your ability to repay the loan if the business goes pear-shaped. So some buyers out there, that's just a conversation that we have with them, and we're happy to do that, get them some education, but we can read them straight away and we know what level of education we need to pass on.
Absolutely. Well, we've actually got a pool of over 6,000 registered buyers with Tabak, and these buyers receive regular communications from us as to what's available and what's coming to the market. And we've split those into, starting from the bottom, we've got C's, we've got B's, we've got A's and an A+. Now, a C is a buyer that wants to spend up to $500,000. A B is someone who can spend up to $1 million. A is 1 to 5 mil, and A+ is they want to spend over 5 million. And as Sam has just alluded to, the A's and A+, and to some degree the B's are reasonably au fait with what a purchase process may look like. They have accountants and lawyers in place, they have advisors, and they kind of get it. It's a lot of the C buyers who perhaps need just a little bit more a conversation, positioning, educating, for want of a better word, and just around what is normal, what normally happens. And it's interesting, even just when a business goes into a due diligence process, and that's where the buyer is reassuring themselves that everything that Tabak and the vendor has told them is true. I will say to both parties, look, I'm going to stay in touch with both of you people right through due diligence, and I'm here at any stage. If you're hearing or seeing something that doesn't quite feel right to you, then you need to sing out, and I can talk you through that and advise whether it's normal or whether it's not normal, because we certainly get some stuff that happens in DD, and sometimes it can be from one of the parties' advisors, frankly, who should know better, who are trying to work an angle, and it's just not appropriate. And we get that with landlords of leases as well, Sam has alluded to previously. So, it's really, really important that your broker, if they're experienced and know what they do, stays right involved right through the whole due diligence process, as well as getting to the point where you're under contract.
And look, and where do our buyers come from? It's a very good question. So we have a very strong database of 6,000 buyers. We have a good CRM system nationwide. We probably need to use it a bit more, where we put notes in there to say, okay, we've talked to John Smith. He actually inquired about this business. Wasn't for him, but this is what he's looking for. This is his background. So if one of our colleagues in Hamilton gets an NDA signed by this buyer, they look at him in the system and there's a note from me saying this. They go, great. They can then say to the vendor, this buyer is known to Tabak. They've dealt with him before. Yep. He seems genuine. Makes our job a lot easier.
Absolutely.
So we build that database. We're quite proud of that database because they're genuine buyers. They receive our newsletters and they receive all of our listings as they become available. We get those buyers from a multiple of sources. That's, accountants often refer their clients. Oh, I've got a client, John Smith. He's really looking at buying a business. It could be they're moving it back from the UK. We got that a lot post-COVID. That when we sold a few to those types of expats coming in, and then obviously, they're all in our CRM system. We even get messages through LinkedIn and emails, and people just saying, "Hey, can I grab a coffee and have a chat?" If you're a buyer, the best piece of advice I can give you is to talk to brokers, not just us. Talk to all the brokers in Canterbury or wherever it may be. Get on their, not just their database, but what I like to call their little black book, which means, oh, this is a cracking business I'm taking to market. The next thing I think of is the person I met last week who's like, oh, I'm really looking for a business that does this. All of a sudden I'm thinking, crap, that person will be such a good fit. And we tell that to our vendor, and our vendor gets really excited. We still go to market, but we just make sure we might just have a chat to this buyer as well. So have those conversations with us. I've got some that every 2 weeks flip me a message. Hey, Sam, got anything good? No. Hey, Sam, got anything good? Oh, actually, there is something coming up. They know the drill. They know to keep in contact with me. They might just get that wee head start thereafter as well.
Yep. And look, some of the, I guess one of the more challenging parts of the work we do is managing expectations, whether that's managing a vendor's expectations or a buyer's expectations. And again, often we're kind of talking through with either party what is usual, what's normal, what's acceptable. I had a conversation with a potential vendor yesterday who were looking to try and that they had a figure in mind for the goodwill value of their business or the intangibles value. And I just said, look, with the greatest of respect, that is completely and utterly unachievable by a factor of $200,000 or $300,000. And I just said, look, absolutely, if that's what you want, that's great. But it won't be with Tabak, because we do not believe the business would sell for the sort of money that you're asking. And we have to be true to ourselves, and we have to be true to them as well. And that vendor's now gone away, and they're going to have a think about things and determine whether they do want to come back and have a crack with us, or they might try their luck elsewhere. And that's fine. We're all very professional. Some of the other, I've had a couple of tough conversations where I've introduced a buyer to a vendor, and they've looked at the numbers, they've met the vendor, they've had a look through the premises. And I've had the vendor come back to me and say, look, great that Jim Smith wants to put an offer on the business, but frankly, I'm really, really concerned that there's some real gaps here in terms of their ability to operate the business. And so where the vendor really is saying, at the end of the day, it's not just about the money. We want the business to survive, and we don't want to throw someone under the bus. So I've had a couple of occasions where I've had to sit down and go through a bit of a gap analysis, where I talk to the vendor about where they perceive the gaps in skill set are, and we just talk through. And in the first instance, it was a number of years ago, as we were going through the conversation, the buyers, who were a husband and wife, I guess they counted our concerns. I didn't have the vendor with me. It was just myself and the buyers. And they said, no, we think we've got that covered for these reasons. And literally every single one we ticked off, and they said, look, we're still keen to proceed. I went back to the vendor and relayed those conversations, and the purchase did proceed. It confirmed, and probably 15 years later, they're still owning the business and they're making good profits from the business. I had one other slightly less fortunate situation only a couple of years ago where it was a modest purchase. It was a trades-related business, and the vendor said, I just don't think this guy's got what it takes. I sat him down. We had a bite of lunch together, and I said, look, there's some real concerns here about blah, blah, blah. Again, I think the buyer heard but didn't listen, or listened but didn't hear. I'm not sure, but they just did not take that on board. They said, no, it's all going to be good. It's going to work out. We took their money. The vendor took their money, and 6 to 12 months later, the new vendor, or the buyer, came back to me saying, look, I've taken on more than I can handle. And so they did sell the business within 6 months, and they burnt through a bunch of money, which was very, very disappointing, obviously for them, but kind of sad for us as well, because we don't want to put people in harm's way. That's not what we do. No. So, we do like to really get to grips with our buyers and know what makes them tick, because one of the big things when we're chatting to the banks, and we ask them about, what are you looking for when you're looking to lend money? Over and above a bit of security, their key thing is, can this buyer learn and work this business? Yep. Do they have the right aptitudes and attitude to fit into this industry and make it sing? And if the answer to that question is yes, then there's an enormously positive chance that the deal will happen.
They'll do what they can do. They're looking at it with rose-tinted glasses. And another bugbear I have is there are some radio ads. I don't know if they're on the radio at the moment, but it's another brokerage. It will remain nameless, and their plug is property. It's returning you 7% yield, whatever it is. Why don't you buy a business? You're going to get a 25% or 33% return, which is a 3 times or 4 times multiple. It's a way better investment. A little bit different. Buy a rental property. You've got tenants. You sit there and they pay rent every week with no dramas. You might need to fix a leak every now and then. You buy a business that has 12 staff and 300 customers. It's got many moving parts, and you have to work in the damn thing. You don't have to work in the rental property. You can keep your day job. But if you buy a business, 9 times out of 10, you're going to have to work in it. And even if it's managed, you're still the director. It's still your name on the bank account. You're still liable for anything that goes wrong. So a managed business will still need at least 20 hours a week from an owner, even if it has a full-time GM in there. So those ads are very misleading. I don't like them. We do get buyers come to us and go, I just want to buy a business as an investment. What have you got? And I go, okay, so are you going to go down to part-time in your job? Oh, no, I don't need to. I'll just work evenings. And you got young kids at home. He's like, yeah, no, it's not going to work. You actually need to, even if it's an industry you're not very comfortable with, you're actually going to need to go on a sabbatical for 6 months. And I'm going to say, work in that business full time, work with the boys or the girls in the factory, learn the trade, because how can you run a business while sitting in your day job? What do you think the staff are going to think of you as a new owner too? Get in there, roll your sleeves up for at least 6 months, learn everything, because those staff might be sick and you might have to jump in there one day. There's so many moving parts to a business. It's not a property. They're completely different mechanisms to earn wealth. So yeah, those ads and misleads those buyers, because we do talk to them and we have to educate them that not as simple as you think it is.
And I think perhaps in closing, on that tack, a lot of buyers do say, hey, well, yeah, I'm prepared to put 10 hours a week and it'll be after hours. I want something that, but it's mostly passive. And our standard response, and it's a very true one, is, look, if you owned a business that was returning you 30% return every year and you had to do virtually nothing every year to generate that income, why on earth would you sell it?
So true.
You just wouldn't sell it, And so I think there's a little bit of, I guess Sam said rose-tinted spectacles out there around what's available and how hard people have to actually work and put time into those sorts of businesses. So
you can get a business to that level. You can buy one and see an opportunity and go, I'm going to get this business humming. I'm going to get it managed. So you can have that business that you're never going to want to sell. But very rarely are you going to see those businesses go to market. You actually have to do a little bit of work to get it to that point, and you've got to be prepared to take a risk and spend a lot of time in the business getting to that point.
So in closing, we love buyers, but we're very open and straight up with them around what's appropriate, what's not, what's achievable, what's not. And if we feel they're not sufficiently prepared to really be going through the nuts and bolts of an acquisition, we will say, look, you need to do a bit more homework here.
So any buyers out there, get in contact with us. Happy to have a chat and a coffee, get you on our books. And that one's up the Tabak Business Sales Podcast.
Thank you.